Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
What's going on, guys? How about we talk about guns for modern Patriots? What's a good modern Patriots loadout? That's what we're going to talk about today on Gunfighter Life, where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to serve you as host. Bio link in the show notes if you're not familiar with the show. But let's get into the topic. Now this is in reference to the book Patriots. I would say the best book for survival and preparedness is, of course, the Bible. There are so many lessons in there on how to live, wisdom, preparedness, warfare. The Bible is your number one resource. But after that, it would be hard for me to pick any book better than Patriots. Patriots is a phenomenal, and I would say quintessential book in the survivalist, post-apocalyptic realm. So hopefully you're familiar with that book. Hopefully you already know what I'm talking about when I talk about the book Patriots by James Wesley Rawls. It's an exceptional book in that it's an entertaining, fictional, post-apocalyptic story, but it's like half that and half an instruction manual on anything from, communications, standard operating procedures, medical procedures, weaved into an entertaining survivalist tale. It's kind of unique in that way from any other kind of survivalist type books that I've read. How it weaves in a fictional story and a good how-to manual. So what I'd like to do, because that book is very good, but it's a bit dated. I think it came out in the 90s. I would look it up, guys, but if you can't tell by the background noise and the subpar audio, I'm at the airport. I got a delay in the flight, so I thought, why not try and record an episode for you guys, make myself useful. And I think the book Patriots, the guns are a bit dated. I want to say this came out right around the assault weapons ban, when that was still in effect or just getting over, because they talk about some of that stuff in the book. So we're talking about in the 90s, a decade that I really started getting hard and heavy into guns, really fascinated by guns. Started competition shooting. A great decade for firearms, but it's a bit dated for today. One of the things he talks about in his book of getting a group of patriots or survivalists or whatever you want to call them kitted out is a camouflage standardized pattern. They go in the novel with British DPM, which, if you're not familiar, is kind of I don't know how to describe it, like a palm tree leaf looking pattern. There's like desert DPMs and regular DPMs. I believe that stands for, if my memory serves me correct, disruptive pattern, so maybe disruptive pattern military. That's what that refers to. I don't think that's the best pattern for today. It also talks in the book about a lot of the cheap camo patterns you could get when the Cold War era ended. Most of that is also dried up, so not a good, I think, choice for today. Much like M81 Woodland was a cool camouflage pattern and kind of ubiquitous in its day, today that is multicam or Scorpion pattern. That is a really good pattern for today. Although you may not want to, now if you want to be super Gucci, you could go with multicam black, because you might not want to go in a pattern that the military actually uses, so you're not confused for the military. Or you could go with a real popular today, retro camo is coming back in vogue. You could go with, a duck camouflage pattern, or the old school timber pattern. If you know what I'm talking about, then you know. There's even a lot of stuff being made in the Vietnam tiger strip. So if you live somewhere in black is not that cool. But standardize on a color and just pick have them set up their own plate carrier. Now, in the book, they talk about a basic, survival battery. In the book, they talk about standardizing with the Colt Gold Cup or one of the Kimber 1911s. Now, I like a 1911. I got nothing against the 1911. It's a great gun, but I don't think in 2025 it's the gun you should go with as a standard. And I'm going to get a little crazy here and say that I don't think that you should have a standard actual handgun platform. I would standardize on 9mm, and I would just stipulate that you would have to have a good serviceable fighting/combat handgun that saw some successful adoption by military or police. So that would be, if you wanted to go Beretta 92, SIG 226. If you wanted to slum it and go with a Glock 19 or 17, fine. It would include the M17, M18. That would include stuff like the HK. But a good military or police proven 9mm modern combat handgun. Optics or no, I'd leave that up to the individual. But how far we've come, optics is something almost unheard of on semi-auto handguns, unless you were talking about an IPSC or USPSA open gun that had some kind of big apparatus mounted to the frame back in the day. It's a similar idea of what I adopted when I did this in real life for a tactical team to stop active shooters. That was one of my jobs. You should see in the bio in the show notes. But I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. I did not specify you have to have this model of gun, because handguns are very individualistic, and we had a very demanding qual on purpose. It wasn't like a check the box qual. It was like a hard qual to pass. And I wanted people to be good with their handgun, not everybody to shoot the same handgun, so that one day, theoretically, hypothetically, you could swap a mag out. I think that's overblown. I would let people choose the handgun that they wanted. I would have a standard caliber, so you could have a stockpile of ammunition, but the idea that you're going to run through all your primary, because if we're talking about a survival post-apocalyptic scenario long gun, you're going to run through all your rifle mags, all your pistol mags, and then be swapping out pistol mags and still be in a position to do so. I think that's a hypothetical that's unrealistic even for a fictional novel in a post-apocalyptic setting. I think it's much more likely and better that you have a handgun that you shoot well and are comfortable with. But if you had to force me to pick a model, I'd probably pick the Beretta 92 series. I've said often I think it's the best combat handgun. So if you had to force me to pick one, I'd probably pick that platform specifically, but I wouldn't want to settle on a platform. I think that's a bad way to look at it. Likewise with the rifle. Now, let us wax philosophical on rifles for a modern Patriot. Now, in the book Patriots, they settle on the HK91 or an AR-15 pattern gun that takes AR-15 pattern magazines. Back then, you were looking at a Colt or you were looking at a Bushmaster. And I think both of those, like pre-ban, you may have had to work around with like the heavy barrel, H-bar barrels and things like that. If you're familiar, if you live through the assault weapons ban or are familiar with it. And it's not like it is today. We live in the golden era of AR-15s today. A good AR was quite a bit more expensive than many other options. Neither one of the Bushmaster or the Colts were like budget rifles. They were expensive. The reason ARs are so affordable now is economy of scale. There are so many manufacturers making so many of them. But if you adjust those prices for inflation from the 90s, man, those ARs were expensive. And they were pretty uncommon to see them back then. Like, only the most hardcore gun guys kind of messed around with those. Probably more common in that era was the Mini 14. But let's get back to what we're talking about today. Now, for today, the AR-15 is a lot more affordable, and we are kind of in the golden era, unless it gets way better, which I don't really see. We're kind of in the golden era today of the AR-15. As much as I'm not the biggest fan of some of the things on the AR-15, I would just make it an AR-15 type rifle that took AR-15 magazines. And if you wanted to run something else that took AR-15 pattern magazines, like a CZ Bren or a SCAR 16, that would be fine. And much like they did in the book, I would have a dual standard. I would have it if you wanted to carry and move up to a 308, then you could run a 308. I would make all the ARs have to be in 5.56. I wouldn't want any boutique rounds. But yeah, if it takes AR-15 pattern magazines, fine. And if you want to move up to 308, I would designate a modern battle rifle in 308, meaning a SCAR 17 would be the gold standard. But also, because those are pretty expensive, the CZ Bren is pretty well proven. Any of the common pattern AR-10s, one of the really good ones I think on the market today is going to be the Ruger SFAR. It's a lightweight, it's handy, it's a full powered rifle. But it's going to have to be something good, modern, that mounts optics. I would still want backup iron sights, but no, I would not want the mini, or not the mini, I would not want the full-blown M14 style, M1A style of rifle. I wouldn't want that. I would want a good modern battle rifle, be it a SCAR 17 or an AR-10 variant. Plenty of those in piston systems or direct impingement. There's the Jackal, the PSA Jackal, and I'm not saying everything that PSA does is great, but I haven't heard too many bad things about the Jackal. So as long as you get yours and you run it, and it seems fine, if you wanted to get the Jackal in 223 or 308, I think that would be okay. But I also like the book. I see the wisdom in the dual standard. If you want to run and carry a 308, go for it. If you want to run and carry a 5.56, go for it. It's, I think, less of an issue than a lot of people make it out to be. In the book on the shotguns, they settle on the, I think, Remington 870, what they call their riot gun. And I love the 870. I think the old 870s are great, but I wouldn't want a group standard weapon to be a gun that you'd have to go find a good used one that's 20 or 30 years old. And I wouldn't want to go that route for a group standard weapon. I would just say Mossberg 500 family, and that includes a lot of things: the Mossberg 590, 590A1, 590Ss, even a Maverick 88. I would want in that Mossberg 500 family. Oh, backing up, if you had an AR, especially a direct impingement, I would have like an SOP that you have to have a spare bolt carrier group. Again, I said there's things that I don't like about the AR. It's got a lot of small, tedious parts that can be prone to damage or breakage, and most of those are in the bolt carrier group. So I would probably say, if you're going to run an AR, which would probably be the majority of the people, you're going to have a spare BCG, which are pretty affordable nowadays, a spare bolt carrier group, and a spare mil-spec trigger group. Both of those are pretty affordable. I'd have a spare in case, again, most of the small things that break in ARs are in those two components, those two larger components. So just have a spare of those. Going back, I would probably make it the Mossberg 500 family. They are still being made to a good standard. They are still pretty good as far as quality control goes. So something in that family. And I don't think that everybody needs spare small parts for those. I probably would have somewhere in the group supplies one for the entire group, one spare trigger group for those. They're pretty easy. They pop out pretty easy. I'd have a whole spare trigger group. You can get those pretty affordably. And maybe one spare bolt group and the other small tedious parts that may have issues, like the shell catch levers and a lifter and things like that. For a group standard 22 rifle for training and for plinking and small game hunting, I don't know if they had a standard in the book, but if I was picking one, I would just 10-22 is like the no-brainer, right? 10-22, or I see a lot of wisdom in having a Smith & Wesson M&P 22. 15-22 is their AR-15 in a 22, because whether you're running an AR-15 or a SCAR or something very similar, a lot of the controls are going to be very similar. So I see a lot of wisdom in like the Smith & Wesson M&P 22s, 15-22. There are other ones, but that one's been around a long time. It's proven. I would encourage you to get the Ruger 10-22, but I would allow the M&P 15-22 or similar if you wanted it, mostly for a training gun for your 5.56. Now, for the training, I haven't actually said this on the podcast before. I've said I was a firearms instructor at one of the big private firearms instructor academies in the country. Also an F.B.I. firearms instructor, handgun instructor, a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certified instructor, N.R.A, and a bunch of other stuff. But I was an instructor for Front Sight. I've never, I think, said that just plainly on the podcast because I didn't really want to be affiliated with them. But now that they're out of business, and I don't think because it was the instruction part, it was because of some financial fiasco. But I was a Front Sight instructor, which is who they recommend in the book. They recommend very highly that shooting instruction school, which is no longer in business. So I was a Front Sight instructor. I will say that even when I was an instructor, their stuff was way dated, and I guess I can openly criticize them now because until they went out of business, I guess I was actually still a registered professional firearms instructor for them. But now they're no longer in business, I would say that their techniques were quite a bit dated, even when I was instructing there. However, there is still a good firearms instruction school in the same location. I have taken classes from them. Other than that, I don't think they know about the podcast or that I exist. And that's going to be PFC, Progressive Force Concepts, out of Las Vegas, Nevada. I would highly recommend those guys to take a look at if you were looking for instruction. And that's about it for, I think, wrapping up this episode, guys. If you can't tell, the audio is a little bit different. I'm actually driving at this point. I don't know with the jet lag and the changing of the time zones, but I'm on something like probably well over 36 hours with just little cat naps here and there. You guys are helping me stay awake on the long drive home on the back roads. But I appreciate you guys are trying to get some content and trying to get caught back up after the trip. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate all that you do. Your tactical verse of the day: you shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor the destruction that lays waste at noonday. That's part of Psalm 91. Thanks, guys, and have a blessed day.
Riley Herbst from 2311 Racing here, and you know what grinds my gears? Waiting for coffee. But instead of counting frappes and lattes, I fire up Chumba Casino. No apps, no fuss, just fun social casino games to pass the time. By the time my coffee's ready,
Order for Riley.
I've already taken a few victory laps. Next time you're stuck waiting, make it entertaining. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.